And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. It's great to have you with us as we continue doing these programs day after day, week after week, if you will, month after month, and year after year. It's wonderful to have you with us here as we come your way every Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. We're streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. And we are also podcasting these programs. But before I tell you that, don't forget about the special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And that's on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. The podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher. It is also on the Amazon Music channel as well as iHeartRadio. So I hope you'll tune into those and others that are all over the place. And we hope that you will find yourself looking for the information that will give you all of the good stuff that I think that will be wonderful. We also are on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. So I hope that you will do that. Today's program, I think you're going to enjoy. I know I am. It's going to kind of take me back to my, you might call it home territory of the desert, the lower desert of Arizona, where we're going to be talking, and actually it's not so much the lower desert as much as where I live now, the high desert, because we're going to be talking about medicine and miracles in the high desert, and it's my life among the Navajo people with my very special guest, Erica Elliott. And Erica, I want to thank you for joining us here on the program and being a part of the work that so many are doing right now in terms of helping others to not only better their lives, but to better the lives of the people around them. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Richard.
First of all, where in the high desert? Where is this high desert of which you speak?
Well, I live in the high desert in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm a medical doctor here, but I started my life as a young woman as a school teacher 50 years ago on the Navajo Reservation in Chelly, Arizona, which is near Canyon de Chelly, which is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And then I spent a few years there as a school teacher. And then I became a sheepherder for Navajo family that spoke no English. And it was to perfect my Navajo. I actually learned the Navajo language. I'm a linguist, but nevertheless, it was one of the hardest languages I have ever confronted. It's like harder than Chinese. And that's why it was a code that was never broken in World War II, because it wasn't even a code. They were just talking their own language, but using it colorfully, like they called a bomber plane an eagle. And nobody could break that code, the only code that the Japanese and Germans couldn't break. And so when I became a sheepherder, I wanted to live the way people did traditionally. And it was just like living 100 years ago. And I became very conversant in Navajo because I had to. And I learned how to butcher sheep, shear sheep, card the wool, spin, weave, dye with plants. I learned all about plants, medicinal, and for dyeing for rugs. Then I went on from there. I wanted to learn more about Indigenous people, and I served in the Peace Corps high in the Andes Mountains with Quechua-speaking Indians, helping them develop bilingual materials, Quechua Spanish, so that children could learn Spanish and get jobs in town in Quito. And there I did a lot of high mountaineering. I joined an all-male climbing club. They kind of adopted me, and they taught me everything they knew. And I ended up doing a first ascent with a peak that was named after me. And I was the first American woman, not the first woman, the first American woman to climb Aconcagua, the highest mountain in the Western Hemisphere, which is 23,000 feet. And anyway, during all this, I had an epiphany that my real purpose in life was to be a medical doctor. And so when I went back, I went to medical school, and I came back to serve the Navajo people as an expression of gratitude for how they had treated me. I mean, once I learned Navajo, the whole world opened up to me. They invited me into their remote hogans and invited me into ceremonies that aren't allowed for white people, including peyote ceremonies, where I saw one miracle after another happen that I could not explain. And to this day, I can't explain what happened, but I witnessed it myself and I saw it happen to others. And so I felt a great debt of gratitude. And that's why I came back to serve them for a few years and then went on and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I have a very busy private practice. I'm also the founder of one of the oldest co-housing communities in the country called the Commons. You can learn about it. I did a TED Talk about it, and you might find it interesting. So that's the trajectory, the overall trajectory. And if you'd like to ask me more specific things about what I witnessed, I mean, they're mind-boggling. Once the children trusted me and saw how hard I was trying to learn Navajo, everything changed. And I mean, these kids, when I first came to the boarding school, 1971, I was a teacher of the fourth grade, and the kids did not talk to me. They did not look at me. I couldn't understand what was going on. I knew nothing about Navajo culture. The boarding school gave me no orientation. I talked to the white teachers, and they were all ready to retire. They couldn't wait to get their pension and leave. They did not enjoy it there. And they felt, I said, why are the kids in fourth grade and they can't speak English? And they told me these kids can't learn. And I discovered once I started speaking Navajo, and the teacher aide was teaching me, Donna Scott, whose father was very famous code talker, Clark Gorman, and her brother is a very famous artist, R.C. Gorman, who's now dead. But she knew the white and the traditional world very well. And so she saw how hard I was trying to make contact with the students and getting nowhere. So she said, I can see you really want to make a difference. And so, I think if you start by showing the kids you want to learn about their culture and try to speak their language, things are really going to change. So she taught me a few sentences. The next day I went in there and tried to say them and totally butchered the language because it's so difficult. And all the students looked up at the same time, first time making eye contact, and they burst out laughing. And that was the beginning of a huge love affair between me and the students. And what I discovered is the students wanted me so much to learn about their lives. Each student asked me to check them out on the weekends from the boarding school and take them to their remote hogans in the middle of nowhere. And I did that, and I was with families that didn't speak any English. And that's when they invited me in all these ceremonies and stuff. Anyway, they saw how interested I was, and they wanted me so badly to learn about their lives. They learned English so fast. These were really smart kids. And these white teachers, these old white teachers, they had no idea how to teach the Navajo students. And it turns out that they arrived not speaking much English, a few words, and by the end of the year, 3 of them won a regional speech contest. That's what shows you what can happen when you care about somebody. You care about who they are. You care about their life, their culture. It's absolutely transformative to me and to the students. So, I mean, it was profound what I saw happen. These were very, very bright kids.
We're talking with Erica Elliott. There is an MD after your name because you're also a doctor. Am I correct?
I'm a medical doctor. I'm practicing. I have a very busy practice in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. And your website?
Well, I have two websites. One is ericaelliottmd.com, but I don't use that very much because I'm not accepting new patients anymore.
Okay.
I have 1,200 patients, and they come from all over the country.
Wow.
I can't handle more than that. I'm just me. And my other website, which the readers might find really interesting, is called Musings with an S, Musings, Memoir, and Medicine. And there they will find all sorts of interesting blog posts and in different categories. One is excerpts from all the different memoirs I'm writing. This one we're talking about is the first memoir of a series of 4. And this memoir that we're talking about is called Medicine and Miracles in the High Desert, My Life Among the Navajo People. And it's available on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or at Inner Traditions, who published it. And
it's also an Audible too.
It's an Audible, and it's a digital, etc., and hardback, softback. So anyway, on my blog site, so you'll find excerpts from the memoir. But what would be even more interesting for your listeners and readers is if you click under categories, you click under medicine, you'll find all kinds of blog posts that are really useful that you won't find in mainstream medicine.
Now, are you referring to your website, Erica M. Elliott, or the Musings, Memoirs, and Medicine?
I'm referring to Musings, Memoir, and Medicine.com. The other website is ericaelliottmd.com. You'll learn a lot about me, but it's inactive because I'm not taking new patients.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we are going to link to your website, the Musings, Memoirs, and Medicine. .com, so that people can find out more about the work that you do aside from just the medicine.
Its memoir is singular. It's Musings, Memoir, and Medicine.com, all one word.
All right, Musings, Memoir, and Medicine.com. That's the website, ladies and gentlemen. So you want to bookmark that. We will be linked to that website so that people, as I said, can find out more about the work that you are doing as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I'm very grateful that you have joined us here along with our very special guest, Erica Elliott, who has been amongst the Navajo. I have to say, I myself, now I don't know if you've had your DNA, if you've done one of those DNA tests, but I had mine done not long ago and found out to my maybe partial surprise, maybe I wasn't that surprised, but to my surprise that I actually have a connection to the Native Americans. But when I say Americans, I'm talking North, Central, and South. According to the DNA, I've got a good percentage of my DNA from North, Central, and South America. I'm actually one part Eastern European Jew. I do have some Northern England blood in me as well, or the part of the DNA, and so on and so forth. I actually hail from 5 of the 7 continents. So I was accurate when I was a kid, and I would tell them, yeah, I'm Heinz 57, 5'7", from 5 of the 7 continents. So I'm wondering about you and your, shall we say, inner connection, your spiritual, if not DNA connection, biological connection.
I'll be glad to tell you.
Yeah.
The Navajo people that I associated with said they'd never seen a white person learn Navajo like that. And they were blown away. And they said, so many of them said, my heart and soul are really Navajo. And they talked about previous lifetimes and so forth. And they gave me a Navajo name, which is really funny. They called me Astsafachi, which means Navajo woman with red skin. And the reason why they called me a red skin is because I was sunburned all the time.
So that was an accurate description.
Yes, it's accurate. It was totally accurate. And I want to tell you something that happened. I want to tell your listeners something that's utterly mind-blowing, and it's one of those miraculous things I was talking about that I saw over and over in the ceremonies. And what I'd like to tell you about is something that happened at my first peyote ceremony.
Oh, wow.
And I did not speak Navajo then. I knew how to say hello. How many sheep do you have? Come here, my child. Not much, maybe a few sentences, because I had only been there a month. And this Navajo family took a real big liking to me. And they belong to the Native American Church, which is the peyote. And it was legal by the government for them to go and harvest the peyote plant in Texas and come back and use it for worship, not for recreation. That was considered very bad use of it. And so this is for praying. It was their religious experience. And white people were not allowed in those days to participate, but they invited me, and they said I was one of their family. They adopted me, so to speak. And they told me that I was a little scared because these are hallucinogens. They call it plant medicine. They don't call it peyote. They call it plant medicine, and use it for healing and stuff. So I was a little bit scared. And, I didn't know what in the world I'd be getting myself into. And my Navajo mother told me I had to get rid of my white man clothes to go into the ceremony. And so she dressed me up like a Navajo and put my hair in one of those Navajo knots with yarn around it, and a beautiful velvet shirt and satin skirt, and with a concha belt and squash blossom necklace, lots of turquoise. I looked utterly regal. I looked like I was ready to go to some Navajo prom or something. And so we filed in there, and you call the medicine man who runs the peyote ceremony a road man. Now, the peyote is not the Navajo traditional healing. They borrowed that from the Plains Indians. And the Plains Indians used it during times of horrendous suffering and genocide. And they used it to survive emotionally and spiritually. And then it spread all over to all indigenous tribes in the US. And the Navajos, a certain branch of the Navajos, really found it very valuable. And in the summer, they use teepees, even though teepees are not Navajo. That's Plains Indians. In the winter, they use their traditional hogans. Anyway, so we were all in a huge circle, and my Navajo mother was sitting next to me. And she told me, she whispered that she would interpret for me and stuff. So anyway, they prayed all night. It was for a sick baby. And I was looking at the sick baby, and I could watch the baby get better as the night progressed. The baby had pneumonia and was copper colored with fever, and really mucusy, crying and stuff. And I watched as the baby got better and better. All the coloring, natural color came back, and it was gurgling, or whatever you call it, cooing and looking at the mom. And I was just incredulous that this was happening while we were singing and chanting and praying. And so part of the ceremony is you take sacred tobacco that is harvested from the San Francisco Peaks, which sadly now is a ski area, but that was one of their holy mountains where they got their healing plants from. And so they rolled these natural little cigarettes with dried plants. And what you do is you inhale, exhale, and then you say a prayer, and then you pass it to the next person. And so my Navajo grandmother was on my right. She did the inhale, exhale, and pray. And then she passed the cigarette to me and said in English, "Pass it on." And I did not pass it on. I inhaled, exhaled, and then I started praying in Navajo, which I didn't know. I mean, I knew 5 sentences in Navajo, and that's it. And wow. I thought to myself, as I was praying, a part of my mind said, wow, you are really stoned, because this feels real, but it can't possibly be real because you don't speak Navajo. So this is a huge hallucination. And I thought, wow, this stuff is really strong. It makes me think that this is real.
Mm.
And so then I passed it on to the next person. And then they had the water drum. It's a metal container with water inside. So, and they beat it and it sounds ethereal, like from another planet or something, or it sounds like the heartbeat of life. And then you take it and you sing a prayer. And the same thing happened. My Navajo mother did her singing and beating the drum, and she said, pass it on. And I didn't pass it on. And I was drumming and I was singing a prayer song I had never heard before in my life. Hey, nay, young, hey, nay, yo, way, hey, yo, way, hey, nay, young, like that. And I thought, wow, I am really hallucinating. And it seems more real than real life. This is amazing. And I passed it on. Anyway, so the prayers went on, and then morning came and we filed out and we put our head forward to the ground, and then we blessed ourselves with our eagle feather fans, and we walked into the cinder block house next door where the women had been up all night making a huge breakfast for all of us. So we sat on a sheet on the floor, on the dirt floor, and on another sheet was the mutton stew, fry bread, canned peaches. And so we started to eat. And the road man, the medicine man, he started talking to me in Navajo. And everybody was staring at me. And the peyote had long ago worn off. And he talked and talked. And I felt so uncomfortable because he kept looking at me while he's talking, and I had no idea what he was saying. And finally, he said, I said in total embarrassment, I said, excuse me, but I don't speak Navajo. And everybody roared laughing. They thought that was a scream. And the roadman said, you sure talked up a storm last night. And I thought, oh my God, you mean that really happened? And everybody laughed and laughed and laughed. So that's just gives your listeners a taste. That's just a taste of what I experienced. I experienced all these amazing things. I experienced things that white people never experience ever in their life.
Hold on one moment here. We're talking with Erica Elliott. I want to let people know who you are and who they're listening to. She's coming to us from a very, very far away, distant place. And it's not just Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's a place where most of us probably will never be able to go just out of our own lifestyle and logistics. But it's a place, it seems, as our guest is sharing with us, that each one of us needs to find a way to go to, and that is to these higher realms that she is sharing with us, that she has experienced. As we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're so grateful that Erica Elliott is with us here on the program to share with us her story. Erica, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in reference, for example, as I shared with you my DNA and all of that stuff, and as much as I loved living for the time that I did in Arizona, aside from the heat, which is the reason I left, I never really wanted to get close to the Native Americans from the standpoint that I knew enough to know that what they had was sacred, it was private, it was personal. It was something that needed to be protected, preserved, and carried on within the tribe of the Native Americans, regardless of tribe. And in your case, it was the Navajo. And so I kind of kept a distance until I had that DNA test. And then I realized, okay, maybe that wasn't so much, I don't want to disturb, for example, I don't want to disturb the still waters, okay? Don't want to muddy them up. It was more probably an innate awareness that until I am ready, I should just observe from a distance. And then one day, I will be led to and brought into that circle, as it were. What about you? It sounds as though and maybe I'm incorrect in this, but from all that you've shared thus far, it seems as though, in spite of the children's having to develop a trust, that you kind of just, it was like, this just feels right, or was there a challenging transition period for you, an adjustment in that regard from
Yes.
the white man's lifestyle to the native lifestyle?
Well, I had a big adjustment, and then they had an adjustment. My big adjustment is when I graduated from college in education. I looked at the trade journals, and I was in the East Coast then, and the trade journals, all the positions didn't look very interesting, and I honed in on this boarding school in the middle of nowhere in the Southwest, which I'd never been to before. That was like off the map for me. And I had no idea what it would be like, but a little voice, my inner compass says, this is where you must go. And my friend said, are you out of your mind? That's in the middle of nowhere. That's crazy. Why don't you go to a regular school? Plus boarding schools. Native boarding schools have a really bad reputation where they've harmed children. They've punished them for speaking their language. They've raped girls. They've done horrific things to the native children. Why in the world would you want to be part of that? I said, I don't know. I really don't know, but I know this is what I have to do. And so I applied to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C., and heard nothing from them. So I thought, oh, they don't want me. So I'm going to take this opportunity to visit my relatives in Switzerland and the rest of Europe and take a year off. And so when I came back from the year, I visited my sister in California, and on her table was a letter from Washington, D.C. It was a year old. It had been forwarded over and over to different places and finally ended up at my sister's. So I opened the letter and they said, we want you. And my sister said, they're not going to want you anymore. That's a year old. I'm sure they have somebody. And a little voice said, call them anyway. So I called up, and it was after the next school year had already begun. It was the end of September. And they said, we want you right now. This position is still open. And my sister said, that's a really bad sign. If it's still open after a year, that means it's a bad place. And so I said, well, I'm going anyway. And so when I got there, I thought, oh my God, I made a really big mistake, because it just, I wasn't used to seeing so much desert, and it all looked different shades of brown, and it was just dirt roads. And there's one road through town. There was one gas station, one restaurant, one grocery store that just sold terrible junk food. And the boarding school was really run down. And I thought, oh, Jesus, because I didn't see Canyon de Chelly, which was just down the road, which is, again, the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. But so I just, this is first impressions were really bad. And then everybody drove pickup trucks, and it was like they were in the 50s wearing cowboy hats and cowboy boots, and Waylon Jennings blaring, she's a good-hearted woman in love with her good-timing man. And I thought, oh my God, this is like from another era. And then the black principal came out to meet me, and I had borrowed my sister's clothes because I didn't have any nice clothes because I'd been backpacking for a year. And so he looked at me like I was a hippie. And he looked like disapproving, and he said, you know, we don't like hippies around here. I said, I'm not a hippie. I just might look like that, but as soon as I get my first paycheck, I'll buy clothes that look like you guys' clothes. And so I said, you mustn't judge me because of my clothes. And so he said, okay. We ended up being very close friends. But he didn't like me at first because of first impression. And because they were all older teachers. So I was this youngster in there, and he was, I think, afraid I was going to cause disruption or something. And anyway, and then things went from bad to worse. In the classroom, nobody would talk to me, and nobody would look at me. I didn't realize they didn't look at me because it was a sign of respect, because I knew nothing about Navajo culture, and the boarding school gave no orientation. That is outrageous. So I was completely ignorant about Navajo culture, and I made one cultural blunder after another out of deep ignorance. And then I went into the teacher room, and all they did is complain about the students, and they didn't say nice things about the students. So I had such a bad impression. I called my father. I said, I've made a big mistake. I'm coming home. And he said, you're coming home? You've only been there a week. You can't judge a person, place, culture, land in a week. I got a suggestion for you. Why don't you stay there 3 months? And if you're still unhappy, you come back and find a job back here. And I said, okay, thinking in my head, there's no way I'm going to spend more than 3 months here. I know I'm going to end up home. That next day changed my life. That's when Donna Scott, my teacher aide, saw how I was struggling, almost to tears. And she said, I see you care, unlike the other teachers. You really care, and you're trying really hard. So this is what I suggest you do. You try and learn a few words of Navajo so they know you care about them. They're so used to not being cared for by their teachers. So that will show them that you really want to make a difference. So she told me how to say, good morning, my children. My name is Miss Erica Elliott. What's your name and where do you come from? And I practiced those really difficult sounds. There's no dictionary then. You had to listen to sounds that don't exist in English at all. And so then the next morning, I walked into the class, and this is what I said. And everybody looked up in total shock. And it's the first time they looked at me. And then one of the little girls put her hand over her mouth and started giggling. And then the whole class burst out laughing. And that's when everything in my life changed. So this is not a white savior story. Mm-hmm. They saved me. I mean, it was so much love between me and the students. And that love was so life-changing for them and me. And it just, I realized in my path in life that whatever purpose I ended up finding, because I knew I was looking for my purpose in life. I didn't know it'd be a doctor, but I was taking notes, so to speak. I knew that whatever I decided was my destiny, it had to include teaching and empowering the student, and now it's the patient, empowering them with knowledge and through the love and caring about them. It's totally transforming. These guys who the white people said couldn't learn ended up being incredibly smart. The love brought out the absolute best in them. They wanted so desperately me to learn about their lives. They learned English so fast, it's hard to believe. That's why I saved a newspaper clipping when the 3 kids won the speech contest. I thought nobody's ever going to believe this story. So I have to document it to prove that it really happened.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, it's to me, it's extraordinary that that you have had the privilege, and actually I would have to say even the honor of being accepted through this process that you went through, and I'd like to talk more about that as we continue. We're talking with Erica Elliott, and she has written her memoir, and we hope that you will go out and get a copy of Medicine and Miracles in the High Desert. In the high desert, and we certainly hope that you'll go to her website. And that website, I'll give that to you again, folks, is Musings, Memoir, and Miracles. Only one plural in there.
Musings, Memoir, and Medicine.
Medicine. Why? And the reason I got Miracles in there is because that's in the title of your book. Musings, Memoirs, and Medicine. .com, and you can go there and find out more about the work that she's doing, read a little bit you can even read the first chapter, believe it or not. And it's also available on Audible, and I happen to have an account on Audible, so I'm going to be getting a copy of your book on Audible and listening to that. I got to tell you, it's so great to be able to listen, even while you're doing other things, and then it's kind of like if it's something that you love doing or, what have you, like when I was a kid growing up and listening to what were audibles today were recordings for the blind and talking books for the blind and building models. And so those models took on sort of that energy of the book that I happened to be listening to at the time. So, boy, it's just great to be. And then hearing the stories you have to share as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's great to be talking with Erica Elliott about her memoirs. The Musings, Memoir, and Medicine.com is the website, and we certainly hope that you will also go to her website, go to Amazon as well, and pick up a copy of Medicine and Miracles in the High Desert. And I'm curious, this just isn't about the various plants and herbs and things, whether we're talking about what you spoke of earlier about peyote and so forth. This is also talking about the rituals and the ceremonies and traditions. There's a tribe here on the Central Coast known as the Chumash. And I've only learned one or two words of Chumash. And there is now, I actually had a couple of people on the program many years ago who talked about a Chumash dictionary that they were working on, which I thought was wonderful to keep the language alive. But my friend Peter, who is a Chumash Indian, shared with me, says the area that you live in right now, which is called Santa Barbara, is actually in the Chumash is called Suktun. And I'm not sure what the exact translation is, but that's the pronunciation, be that as it may. It's probably the only word that I know, but I will tell you that when I greet him and when we depart, we clasp each other by the upper arm just below the elbow and lean into each other shoulder to shoulder, and we always say, aho, aho.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I love that.
Nice.
So talk to us, if you will, please, about some of the, maybe one or two of the most significant experiences that you had in ritual, tradition, and or ceremony that profoundly changed you into, and I don't want to speak incorrectly here, but basically transformed you into, if I may, a Navajo Indian.
Okay, so my process for them saying I was a white-skinned Navajo, actually red-skinned Navajo, was through my desire, my empathy with them, putting myself in their shoes, seeing life through their eyes, participating in their whole life wholeheartedly, without judgment, without reservation, without holding back. And I'd like to tell the listeners about something really profound that happened that I don't have any explanation for. It was a healing on me. And so what happened was I developed this lump under my jaw. And I was not a doctor. I was pretty ignorant about anything to do with medicine, but it didn't feel right. It felt hard, like a rock, and it didn't really move. But I, like so many of my patients, thought if I just ignore it, it'll go away. Well, it didn't go away. It got bigger and bigger. In fact, one of my students, which really caught my attention, said, Miss Elliott has a goiter. No, it wasn't a goiter, because a goiter is an inflammation of the whole thyroid from iodine deficiency. But it just told me that this mass was so big that she thought it was something with my thyroid. And so I thought, wow, I'm going to have to do something about this. And so I, like many of my patients, were really scared of doctors, but I forced myself to take a day off and drive to the nearest charity hospital called Sage Memorial Hospital. And it was about an hour and a half away. And like most hospitals, it smelled like disinfectant. It was very sterile, and I felt really uncomfortable being in there. And the intern, who was very serious and no sense of humor at all, in his white coat, and he said, "This looks really bad. I think you have lymphoma." I didn't know what that word was, but he said cancer. And I freaked out. And he said, "We have to do a biopsy." And so he said, why don't you come back in an hour and we'll be all set up. Instead of coming back in the hour, I was so frightened that I left. And I drove back to the reservation, and I talked to my teacher aide, Donna Scott, and I said, this guy thinks I have cancer. I'm really scared. What should I do? Can the medicine man help me? And she said, "Yeah, I know a medicine man who can help you. And here's how to find him." And listen to her instructions. She said, "Go down the wash," meaning the arroyo, and you go until you see a big sagebrush on your left. Then you turn right at where the big sagebrush is, and then you'll go till you see like 3 piñons in a row. And then you go left there, and then you park and walk down these sandstone ledges. And that's, oh my God, I got so lost. I'm not used to those kind of instructions. And I finally found him, and he looked at it, and to my great dismay, he said, "This isn't my specialty." And he said, I know a Hopi medicine man. He gave the name and which village on the mesa. So I spent a whole day looking for this medicine man, this Hopi. I found him herding sheep. And again, to my dismay, he said, "This is not my specialty." So I was so discouraged. And then I told my Navajo family that adopted me about it. And they said, "Oh, no problem. We're gonna pay for a ceremony for you, so we can get that fixed with the roadman." I thought, oh yeah, sure. And so they said, "But it's really expensive paying for these ceremonies," because these people were really poor by white standards, really poor. And that meant butchering a sheep, and sheep are very valuable, that they butcher a sheep and then they have to pay the roadman. So they said, "We're going to share it with another family who has a sick baby. And they'll pay half the cost." So I said, okay. And so in the ceremony, first of all, something very funny happened, not related to the tumor. I had a ring on my finger, and now I was really sort of affected by the plant medicine. It was acting in full force. And I hallucinated that it was a wedding ring. And I thought, oh my God, I'm married. I don't even know who I'm married to. And everybody looked at me and started laughing. And that was just a thought. I never said that out loud. And so when everybody laughed, I thought, oh my God, nobody's ever going to believe that this kind of thing is happening. And then the roadman said out loud, he responded to my thought. And he said, "No, they won't believe you. You don't need to tell the white people about what happened." I thought, oh my God, they read thoughts. That's outrageous. And so I have to be careful what I think about. And so anyway, they prayed so fervently all night, and I kind of was focused on the baby, and I forgot sort of that this was about me too. I really forgot. And I watched the baby get well. And then we filed out and we went into the cinder block house when morning came, and we sat down for breakfast, and everybody stared at me. And I thought, why is everybody looking at me? I just couldn't figure it out. And then immediately I remembered, and my hand went right under my jaw, and the mass was not there. It was not there. And I kept pressing and pressing and pressing. And for many years, I developed up to this day, I developed this habit of feeling under my jaw to see. And this was 50 years ago, and I still feel to see if it's come back. And so whenever, I talk about this, people say, how do you think this happened? And I said, I really don't know. I could make something up and talk about quantum physics and that there is no past, present, future and stuff like that. But I would just be making that up. The real truth is, I don't know. I don't know. It shows that we're just living in a tiny part of reality. There's so much out there that we don't have access to. I mean, it just was mind blowing. Richard, I can't hear you.
Do you think that we, in the quote unquote modern and or civilized world, need to learn to stop asking why something is or isn't and just accept it? In other words, when that happened to you, you don't know what happened. You just know that it did, and just go with it.
Yeah, the only reason why I struggled so much to try to find a reason is so I could sound credible to my friends. I didn't want to sound like I was making this up or something. So I desperately was looking for some way to explain this that was credible. And so I gave up, and I just said, oh, okay. And one reason why it took me 50 years to write the book is because in the beginning, I document everything I saw. That's why writing the book was so easy for me. I could do it so quickly. I kept extensive journals, diaries and stuff, because I was seeing things that no white person had ever seen or experienced. So I wanted to document it because I thought even I, years later, might not even believe this really happened because it's so outrageous. So I documented everything, thank God.
Yeah.
And so I showed it to one sister who's very open-minded, and she said, you have got to publish this. And this is incredible. And I said, I'm not going to, because nobody will believe me, and they'll think I have just a big imagination. And I didn't even tell the rest of my family because it would hurt my feelings when people didn't believe me. And so then when I matured more and I didn't care if people believed me or not, then I was too busy being a medical doctor. Okay, so how did I finally write it? With all the divisiveness in our times, this terrible cultural, racial divisiveness, I thought, now's the time to write my book. I have to make time to write it because it is a healing book. Because it's all about bridging the cultural divide in these divisive times.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems to me that these other cultures are the ones that are there to teach us.
Yes.
And we need to be listening.
That's right. That's why I say this is not a white savior book.
Right.
This is not white girl comes and saves the world. No, I learned. They saved me. They had a profound effect on me.
This is a fascinating story. I want to talk more about this as we continue, although we are getting close to the end of our program. But I want to let you know that you are listening to Tell Me Your Story with New Paradigms for a New World. And some of those paradigms may go back in history, and we need to bring them forward into the present so that we can create a better world for everyone. And we're going to continue talking with Erica Elliott here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and thank you for being with us here on the program. Erica, this has been a fascinating hour or so, and I know that you are on your way to your next appointment, what have you. But first of all, I want to thank you for sharing the small little bit of your experiences. I hope people will get a copy of your book as well and go to your website, which we will be linked to so that people can get more information in that regard, and get a copy of your book on Amazon is one of the places that they can go to get a copy of your book. But I thank you so much for being a part of this program and the work that we are doing in sharing the work, sharing the work that you are doing. So thank you so much.
Richard. Thank you very much, Richard.
Medicine and Miracles in the High Desert. Erica Elliott is my guest. And Erica, I do have 3 final questions that I would like to ask you, if I may, before we wrap up here. But before I ask you those questions, I need to remind you, the listener and the viewer, that this is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday mornings at 1 a.m., 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. Podcasts are at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and a whole bunch of other places. The list is too long. The whole show, I would have to just do the list. But you can find them. Just Google Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan. Boom. You'll find SoundCloud in particular. Spotify is a great place as well. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews and subscribe. I'm up to a whopping full deck of 52 subscribers. And hey, I'm not saying that's too small. I'm just saying, hey, thank you to the 52 who are there and the 56,000 listens in 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. 56,000 listens in 4 years. And what's really amazing is ever since I expanded to many of the new web podcasting sites, platforms on the internet, ladies and gentlemen, I have literally doubled the listenership of this program on the podcasts in less than 1 year. So the first 3 years and a half, I was like at 25 or 30,000. In less than a year and a half, I have gone up to 56,000 plus. So thank you, and keep spreading the word. And spread the word about our guests like Erica Elliott, the work that she is doing right now to help people, not just through her medical practice, but through the work that she is doing with the Navajo and other, I'm sure, other indigenous peoples, other tribes here in the great North American continent, if you will. Also, want to remind you that if you'd like to support the work we're doing here on Tell Me Your Story, we would love to have your support. If you can see your way to do so, if you're able to do so, we thank you for doing that. And we have a PayPal account that is there for your security as well as ours. I like PayPal as my middle person. And all you have to do when you click on, I want to send X number of dollars to Tell Me Your Story and Richard Dugan to help support the work he's doing, they're going to ask you for an email address. It's richard@richarddugan.com. Easy, richard@richarddugan.com. And you touched upon this a little bit, Erica. We have a campaign we've been doing for probably 2.5 years. It's called The Decade of Perfect Vision. Now, we had the year of perfect vision, 2020. Now it's the decade, the 2020s. And we encourage people to, guess what? Go within, to spend time in that quiet, still, calm, peaceful place. Listen to that still, small voice and use the promptings, use the encouragement, take in the insights, if you will, and relax and be confident and comforted, if you will, in what you are hearing. I know that it's challenged me on many occasions. Never, ever has it put me in harm's way. So I can attest to the fact that, yeah, it can challenge me. And I still will do my best to follow the promptings. And sometimes it's pretty quick. It's like, oh, I should have, back there, I should have done this, that, or the other thing. So hope you'll do that. Participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. And with all of that, the first of my 3 questions to you that I ask all of my guests, you may have addressed them during the program, but I like to ask them directly. The first is, who is Erica Elliott?
I can't be pinned down because I have so many different sides to me. And I'm a Gemini, by the way. They have lots of different sides. So who is Erica Elliott? She has many, many different characteristics. But the one thing that people notice about me is an insatiable curiosity, a lack of judgment against people that are different than me, and a desire to be of service, because that's my purpose in life, to be of service and use the gifts that I was given. I happen to be an incredible medical detective. That's why people came from all over the country with undiagnosed mysterious problems. And I use just simple tools to help them get better. And so I will leave it like that. Otherwise, we'd be writing a whole book on the different characteristics, sides of me. Good and not so good.
All right. Well, the second question is, what is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I'm already there. I am doing what I'm meant to be doing. It took me 10 years of searching all over the world to find out what my purpose was. And in each thing I did, like with the Navajos, with the Quechua speaking Inca descendants, I learned something about what I needed to do. And it finally dawned on me that it was medicine. And after 10 years of medicine, mainstream medicine, I decided this is not my purpose, just to give out pills and do lots of scans and not have a relationship with the patient and not really try to get to what's underlying the symptoms. And so the Navajo grandmother prophesied that something very bad would happen to me, and that if I survived, I would, quote, have powerful medicine to bring to the people. This was after a mountain lion sniffed me in my sleeping bag in southern Utah. And I told the teacher aide, and she brought me to her grandmother, and the grandmother said that the lion was my spirit guide. Well, I had the disaster and I survived, and it took me right out of mainstream medicine onto my true path in life, which is doing medicine in a way that's not mainstream. It's in alignment with my intellect, my common sense, my soul, my love of people, and all the stuff that I've learned over the decades in service to my patients in a meaningful way. That's why I'm 73 and I have no interest in retiring, because I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I have found my destiny, and it's extremely meaningful and extremely fulfilling.
Well, you've sort of answered my third question, which is, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is using my gift, my natural gift, and drawing on everything I know in service to helping people feel better.
Well, Erica, once again, Erica Elliott, thank you so much for joining us here on Tell Me Your Story. It's been a great pleasure to get to know you, and I hope that we get a chance to have you back on the program to continue this conversation, because, as I said earlier, I think it's extremely important for us to understand that it is possible. The Native Americans from North, Central, and South America have shown us clearly it is possible to live in concert with nature and not subjugate it. And when I use that word, it means to strip the land and the resources and to control them and then use them as leverage against other members of the human race. And we need to stop doing that, and we need to start realizing that this is our only home. I don't care if we are exploring other regions off this earthly plane and off this planet. Right now, for the majority of us, 8 billion, this is it. This is all we've got. And I keep seeing more and more women, pregnant women. I keep seeing more and more infants in strollers. And I'm sitting here going, what's the point? Because we're destroying the home we live in. So where are these people going to live, and how are they going to survive? And then their children, if we get beyond that, and so forth. And that's why we're here, to try to help to change and transform this world. So I thank you for your part in that role.
Thank you, Richard.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal.